Podtacular, the unofficial Halo Universe podcast, presents episode 678, Kilo 5, recorded live on April 18th, 2019. Hello everyone, welcome to Podtacular, the unofficial Halo Universe podcast. I am your host, Duststorm.
I am your co-host, Godzilla T.
And welcome to our first book club podcast in who knows how freaking long.
Dust actually finished the book.
I know. Shocker. I finished 3 books, actually. Talking about the Kilo 5 trilogy tonight, and we've got a few guests to help us here. Got a few people returning. Of course, I think you've been on for almost every piece of lore that we've talked about so far. But welcome back, Toa Freak.
I think the last time I was on was actually back in the Hunt the Truth.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun. But
those were fun.
No, actually, it was the E3 one we did a couple of years ago. But whatever. What is glad to be back and talking lore.
Yes, all the lore. We also have Masterz from the SPV3 team joining us as well for a little lore discussion.
What's up, everybody? Good to be back.
Welcome. And we have all the way hearkening from Podcast Evolved, one of our fellow podcasts out there. We have Aaron. Welcome to the show.
Guys. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks for getting on the show. It's I don't think we've actually had a Podcast Evolved guy on yet, so I think you're our first crossover guest from over there.
It's probably wise. There's a reason people don't invite us on as guests. I'm here to terrorize you all.
Well, then you're welcome on Halo Canon anytime.
Yeah, I would say the only other time that would have been a possibility would have been for a Halo Bowl podcast, but other than that, I don't think we've had anyone else on yet from Podcast Evolved.
That was probably Oren, because no one lets me do any multiplayer stuff, so that's why we focus on lore.
Probably was. Well, we got quite a few people in the Mixer and YouTube chats, so thanks everyone for listening to us live tonight. And yes, Top Kick, I know, it's about time. I finally got my button gear, read some books. I'll let you know that I am a third of the way through Bad Blood, so I am still reading some books. So the next book club podcast shouldn't be too far away. But we have 3 books to talk about tonight. The Kilo 5 trilogy from Karen Travis. Pretty good stuff in there. Lots to talk about. I'm going to leave the whole in-detail synopses to the Halo Conversationalists folks and the Podcast Evolved folks. If you want a detail-by-detail review of the books, then I would recommend checking out those 2 podcasts. But for what we're going to do tonight, we're going to hit on some of the high points, some of the stuff that really interests us individually, and some other high important things that impact the Halo universe overall. Before we do that, though, we got some Halo news, quite a bit of news, actually. We're going to speed through as much as we can of the news now, and then get into the Kilo 5 trilogy, because I have a feeling this could be a long podcast.
I want to go to bed on time.
Well, we'll try to get through it.
Close to on time.
All right. We'll try to make that happen. So let's get into some of the news. We got the latest community update out before the podcast. Thanks for getting that out there. It was a close call last week, but we were able to pull it through. So thanks, Uni, for getting that one out there. we've got a couple of new announcements. There's a little mini update from Sketch about the Insider update. They're still trying to get things out for the first flight this month, which is a week and a half before it's done. So we'll see if that comes around. But there is a development update being worked on by Postums for release sometimes next week. So we'll get a little bit more information of what's coming up with the flight. And then there's possibility that there will be streaming allowed for the first public flight. So we got some potential stuff coming in the next week or so for the flight. We also have some playlist updates coming to all titles for MCC and Halo 5. For MCC, we've got some social game updates. So there's a new Rumble Pit offering that contains 56 maps across all games and will include a variety of maps. Slayer includes the standard Slayer AR start, Infinity variants, and higher weighted BR starts. Zone Control includes Crazy King variants across all titles. Asset Denial includes Oddball, Rain in CE, Juggernaut in Halo 3, and Regicide in Halo 4. Action Sack includes Fiesta, Swords, Rockets, Shotguns, Slayer Duels, and Rally in Halo 2 Anniversary. Race in Halo 3, and Ninja Assassins in Halo 4. And skill-based matchmaking has been enabled for all social games. They're also publishing a playlist update that will improve some free-for-all experience. Then the skill-based matchmaking obviously will be a welcomed effort to hopefully make a little bit more even matches, because I know I've definitely run across some crazy ones before. And then for ranked games, Halo 3 Lone Wolf's content has moved to Rumble Pit and is being retired. Looking ahead, Rumble Pit rotating in, multi-team will be rotating out next week. It won't be gone forever. It will rotate back in at some point. And there is also 1 week left on the Yappening, so if you need to get your nameplates, you've got 1 week left to do it. There's been some Halo Wars 2 balance updates. There's quite a bit of stuff in here, so if you want to get the latest on that, Postums has a forum thread for you to go check out. A little bit more leader balancing going on there. And then for Halo 5, we've got Hardcore Super Fiesta. So they've taken the Team Arena ranked playlist, and it's been thrown in with Fiesta. So if you ever wanted to rank in Fiesta, now's your chance.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to see what I can do with it.
Ranked Super Fiesta.
I can only say it reminds me of the time they did ranked Griffball back in Halo 3. I don't know if anyone else remembers that.
I vaguely remember it. I'm trying to get like my 50 in it because I was locked on everything else.
Yeah, I remember a lot of people doing that.
I mean, Griffball is a pretty competitive game.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm just like, it's just, the responses right now remind me of the responses back then.
Oh sure, but Griffball's a lot more. I don't think Super Fiesta would ever get this 100%. Serious, but Griffball is definitely a serious.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Game of the future.
Fun fact, I actually did Griffball for the first Griffball league, whatever that American Griffball
league. AGLA.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Way back when.
Mm-hmm. The rest of the April schedule looks like this for Halo 5. On April 18th, Shoddy Snipers rotates in for Action Sack. Covenant Slayer rotates in for Griffball. And Warzone Turbo also goes live on April 25th for the weekend.
Any bets on if Dust will actually play it?
Oh yeah, I need to put that post out this week, don't I?
Place your bets now, folks. We do not condone gambling, but you got to when it comes to that.
I could do something where someone could reply to a tweet, and whoever guesses right, I can randomly pick someone to give $10 of Xbox credit to. It might make for a fun little contest.
Well, you never know. I do have that code.
Which one?
The one I was telling you that I got emailed for Xbox Game Pass.
Oh, that's right. It's like I knew you mentioned the code. I just forgot what it was. That's not a bad idea.
We could do that.
Yeah? Yeah, that's possible.
Probably ought to do it before I forget and accidentally delete the email.
All right. Yeah, that's something that we can do.
Let me make sure I still have it first. Yep,
Well,
it's still there.
we'll work something out. Okay, cool. For HCS, DreamHack Dallas is on its way next month. This is taking place May 31st through June 2nd. It's a Halo 3 4v4 tournament on MCC at the Dallas, or the K. Bailey Hutchison Convention Center in Dallas. Hotel information and tickets are purchasable through the update and through halo.gg. Big Team Battle 2 Electric Boogaloo is looking to make a resurgence through the HCS grassroots, so we might see something at DreamHack Dallas for that.
Huh? Maybe.
Well, we'll have to see if that continues. Microsoft Store tournaments are also still going on. I believe there's another one set for May. The next one is actually April 28th, so this next weekend. And then there's another one on May 19th, and that's all of the confirmed tournament stores so far for the Halo 3 2v2s, and then they might change it up, so we'll have to see when that happens. For Halo Outpost Discovery, today, 343 dropped the news that both Steve Downes and Jen Taylor, the voices of Master Chief and Cortana, will be at all 5 outposts this summer. I'll be right there, because I'm going to all 5 most likely.
Jesus, man.
Yep. That'll be every other week.
I salute you. I salute your bravery.
I've got 4 panels. I'm currently organizing for multiple locations. So I've got a podcasting panel, which is going to most likely be Chicago and Philly. I've got a fan games and mods panel that I'm currently organizing, and that is likely to be at all of them except Houston. I've got a community panel that I'm planning to do at all locations. And I'm also trying to coordinate with 343 a game show like panel. So if people remember the Halo Match game panel at RTX in 2017, doing something similar to that. I've gotten the interest from 343 to help with giveaway stuff. So my next coordination step is with trying to see if we can get 343 people on there, voice actors, other people on there to kind of help be actors in those games. So trying to get that all coordinated for all the sites. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of panel coordinating right now. All in good fun, though. All in good fun. There's also it looks like for them there's going to be an hour-long meet and greet with them on each day. So that's also kind of crazy. And there will be a panel with them on Saturday at each of the events. So there's going to be plenty of chances to see both of them at all of the outposts, no matter which one you're going to. So you're right. Crazy travel schedule. There's a cover in here for Halo Battleborn. I guess so. I didn't get a chance to look over this too much, but it's Halo Battleborn Meridian Divide. I guess this is a sequel to Halo Battleborn. All right. So another book for me to be behind on.
Looks
you're
really good.
Not catching up.
Audiobooks, man. They are a
audiobooks are the way to go. Trust me.
I don't like audiobooks, but I've used them to catch up, and they've been incredibly helpful on that front.
Uh-huh.
With the exception of the Battleborn audiobook, which is really hard to listen to.
Oh, I loved it. You're insane.
Oh, I didn't like the ASMR thing they had going on.
You want to talk bad? Do the Forerunner trilogy via audiobook.
Ooh,
that I've not done. Who narrates?
Oh, I forget. I know who does the middle book, but it's kind of a...
Oh, I know the middle one's done by Tim Dodabo, right?
Yeah,
the last
it's
one
fantastic.
Is, yeah.
Ouch.
I forget who does the other two.
What is it, Cryptum?
Yeah.
Audiobook. Helps if I can spell Cryptum, right? This one is narrated by Holter Graham.
Anyway, I'm looking forward to the Battleborn sequel. really it caught my eye on the cover, though, is the use of, what's his name, of Owen's Mark V armor. That wouldn't fit in because it's still supposed to be like 2548 or so, maybe 2549. So I'm just going to chalk that up to be either there's a huge time skip or he's just wearing Mark 4B. Thank you, Grim, for canonizing that.
There you go.
Yeah, Silentium was done by Ewing Morton.
Yep. Ewing Morton. And that was the last one. So the middle one was Tim Didabo. All right. There you go. So this Halo Battleborn Meridian Divide is going to be coming out later this year on October 1st. There's a little bit of a montage from the Queensland Logan LAN tournament. Or, sorry, this isn't a tournament. That's a promo. This is actually taking place, I believe, next month in Australia. So Australia getting some Halo love. This is, actually taking place next weekend. So Saturday, April 27th through the 28th. And we got a couple of radar blips. The 343 social stream this week was hosting Moto streams over on Mixer. And then there was also a community spotlight last week, which we briefly touched on. Some Halo TV show news.
A little bit. Oh.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things.
Just a wee bit.
So the announcement for who will be playing the Master Chief has been made, and it is Pablo, I'm going to butcher this last name, Schreiber? Okay. That was close-ish.
He seems like a good pick. He's got the height. And if they, I don't want to start a debate here, but if they decide to show Chief's face in the series at all, he kind of looks like how the Chief's described. So, I mean, Chief isn't a redhead. Frank O'Connor, because this just happened today on Twitter with an artist, Irene Coe, I think her name was, fantastic artist by the way. She talked about John being a redhead, and Frankie does describe him as having reddish hair in an old Eurogamer interview. But the books always described him as John as having brown hair.
Yeah.
And all of the media since.
Even in the Halo 4, he had a darker hair. Just what little of it you could see once they exposed the eyes.
Yeah, it says somewhere reddish brown, and people keep going, but that means red. And I'm like, no, reddish brown is not the same as ginger. It's very different.
Yes, it is significantly different because my brother started life with that color hair.
And all the media that depicts him has him with distinctly brown hair.
I think it doesn't help that they describe him as a child with freckles as well, so everyone's mind immediately goes to like freckly redhead.
That means a ginger.
No, that does not mean a ginger.
Oh yeah, believe me, I know. I know that every time I look in the mirror.
So Pablo is Emmy and Tony nominated actor from American Gods and Orange is the New Black. I know nothing about him, but the responses I've seen on social media seems to be pretty positive about him.
Yeah, I was genuinely surprised that no one was upset or outraged because I looked through everything going like, nope, the community's happy, something's wrong, the sky is falling. But I'm looking forward to this. He's fantastic in American Gods. That's all I know him from, but he does a very good alcoholic leprechaun, so as an Irish person, I'll vouch for him.
Master Chief, isn't it? An alcoholic leprechaun?
Oh my gosh.
Well, we'll have the post-Halo 4...
alcoholic leprechaun.
Oh man, you guys don't even want to check him out in Orange is the New Black then. He's like this crazy like security guard who's like absolutely hilarious. Or he's a correctional officer.
Come on, Blue Team. We have to destroy Cortana. We have to stop her from activating the Halos.
We're getting dangerously close to the racism. It's like being on my normal podcast. Watching you all.
Oh boy. Gotta ring this one back in properly. So, he is being joined by, and I forget if this was already made an announcement before, but Yurin Ha, who's going to be playing the character of Quan Ah. And she is a 16-year-old, or the person that she's portraying. So Quan Ah is supposed to be a 16-year-old from the Outer Colonies, meeting Master Chief.
I did not hear about the Outer Colonies bit. gives me some hope that maybe we'll see some insurrectionist action. That'd be a lot of fun.
I mean, a lot of the lore folks, and I wouldn't consider myself necessarily a deep lore person, but I do have wanted to see some more being touched on the insurrectionist part of Halo's history.
That'd be like just a great thing with the TV show is you could touch on this, you could introduce it to that larger audience, and perhaps open up that larger audience and thus the larger Halo community to that part of the universe, potentially in future games, because a lot in the lore community have, to varying degrees, I don't want to speak for everybody there, obviously, but have to varying degrees asking for insurrectionists in the Halo games to some degree.
Yeah.
Even as far back as Halo Reach, if not earlier.
Well, with the way the path they've taken on some of the external lore, and I'm speaking very broadly because I don't want to spoil anything for people that haven't read the books yet. Dust. It is highly probable that they will touch on the insurrectionist in the TV show. It might be a larger part than most people will give it credit for.
That's fingers crossed, man.
I would love to see that, personally. We'll have to see.
Indeed.
On the Halo Infinite front, there is a returning pro team veteran, Vartan Killer V. Okay, last name's gonna be butchered. Karakashian, shut up, whatever. Killer V has rejoined 343 to work on the pro team at Halo Infinite. We've also got a few other pro team hires. Greg Gregor Haas has also joined the pro team. And we also have Hunter Baby J Schlein. So 3 new members on the Halo Infinite pro team. And we've got a new piece of artwork. This comes from Halo 4. Thanks, Uni, for the consistent art updates. It is much appreciated. So save that one later. A couple of other things to touch on before we head on out to the main topic of discussion. For any of you collectors interested out there, Mega Constructs has revealed 10th anniversary line of Mega Constructs sets, and the first one is going to be a 10th anniversary Scorpion tank, which I will be buying.
Is that the one that's like
Big surprise.
5 or 6 builds all in one? Like it's got different setups that you can build, or am I thinking of something else?
Assuming that they just announced this, I'm guessing you're thinking of something else.
Maybe. Whatever.
Halo Collector's in here, so he can clarify if need be.
Yeah, the 20-in-1 Scorpion tank. That was it. So it's like a bunch of different builds that you can put in there. So I'll probably want to try and pick up a few of those so you can have the different builds all at once. I
don't know if I've heard of that one, actually.
That's the one you linked.
Oh, that is?
Yeah.
The 10th anniversary one?
I saw the link in the chat. Yeah, the 20-in-1 Scorpion.
Did I just completely miss a title that I didn't? Oh, I did. Oh, wow.
We all make that mistake at some point, man.
Wow. Wow. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, for your host this evening not being aware of just things staring him in the face. Might make this tonight interesting for the discussion. This is why I have other people on to help me out when this kind of stuff happens. Okay. I think that covers most everything news-wise. Oh, 2 other things before we move on. 2 really cool videos to check out. First, someone actually restored the Halo 2 Warthog run. And with mods, you can actually play it in Halo PC. Halo 2 on PC.
Halo 2 Vista, just
what?
Halo 2 Vista. So after cartography, you can do it. Just because there's so many Halo PC forks out there.
Right. Yeah. So it was Blackbeard someone, I think. Something along those lines. Went in and actually got all the voice lines and scripts back in there. And it's pretty legit.
Yeah, I actually reached out to Hardy LaBelle on Twitter, who was the mission designer for that mission, who had tried getting it working. And he had actually at one point talked to me out at PAX about what he was trying to do with that mission and stuff, because that's the shortest mission in Halo 2. Forerunner Ship is the name of it, but you all know it as High Charity. But he had come in very late in development after shutting down another project at Bungie, Gypsum, which I think they talked about in the Vice article, and then there was another article of Marty O'Donnell on IGN where they briefly talked about it.
Okay.
Hardy LaBelle was supposed to figure out how that game was gonna, become an actual product, and eventually he was like, we can't really make a game out of this. So he got put on the Halo 2 campaign team, and that was his mission to complete. But he said he could never get the zero-G stuff working with the Graviblips or the Warthog working right. And it's funny because you can actually see in the mod that's what he couldn't get down working too.
Yeah.
You're right.
But other than that, he said it's pretty close to what he wanted.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it truly is amazing how much he was able to recover.
Well, probably a lot of that stuff was left in there, but with the terrible tools for Halo 2 Vista out there, getting that working is no easy task, and then even basic stuff like getting the Pelicans to crash probably took a lot of trial and error and things like that.
Well, if anything else, you guys should definitely check out the video if you don't want to mess around with mods or trying to get it to work in Halo 2 Vista with Project Cartographer. But it's an interesting little addition, and the Warthog run's obviously not very long, but it's a nice little throwback to the Warthog run in Halo CE, and there's a cool couple of things in there. The next thing, I guess, would be, now since this is actually in there, were there any Easter eggs?
Yeah. A lot of that stuff in Halo 2 is pretty clean cut. I'm actually surprised that that made it in there. I've looked in their script files before, but I'm sure when you go through it with a fine comb, there's plenty of gems to find. Yeah.
Then the other video, this comes from Crazed Halo, and it's funny because he's known pretty well for his Team Fortress 2 videos, but he has a couple Halo videos, and he basically remastered Monty Ohm's Haloid. And oh my gosh, is it amazing.
Yes, it is.
I almost cried while watching it because it's like, I'm sure for a lot of people, like Haloid was the introduction of Monty Ohm. Oh my god, just so much nostalgia and emotion, and it was a beautiful, beautiful remaster. There's clearly a lot of love, and I could gush for hours.
Like, it was awesome to see that it felt exactly the same.
Yes.
As the original Haloid. It's just like you went from Xbox Haloid to Xbox One Haloid, and like that's literally the difference. It's crazy insane how accurate the animation is from the original Haloid to this Haloid.
Imagine sitting there watching that thing like 240p and trying to, okay, how did that shotgun flip there?
All the animation is on point. It's a beautiful piece of work. It better get in that community spotlight next week.
Oh, it better, man.
There's a lot of videos going to be in that community spotlight next week because there's a lot of them coming out. All right. That's the news out of the way. Done with. Time for Kilo 5. Time for this behemoth of a trilogy. Level setting for those that are behind like I am. Kilo 5. The Kilo 5 trilogy starts actually, I guess, technically like either before or right during the events of Halo 3, because there's I mentioned in the Glasslands book where the Arbiter actually gets invited by Lord Hood to come to Earth for the memorial service for Chief and everyone who died on the Ark. Toa, Neil, or Aaron, fill me in here on where that timeline exactly is.
So there's actually like two timelines technically. So you have the timeline within Onyx, which is set pretty much immediately after Ghosts of Onyx, which would be between Halo 2 and 3.
Right.
And then you have the main timeline, which is, I think, starts in January of 2553, if someone wants to correct me on that.
Oh, I am absolutely not correcting Halo canon on anything here.
Well, please correct me if I'm wrong. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since I just like skimmed through Kilo 5 recently for some other stuff.
It starts shortly after Halo 3, I think within...
Yeah, I think it's like weeks after Halo 3, isn't it?
I don't think any of it's... Oh, yeah, weeks and months. I'm getting my dates confused because, yeah, Halo 3 ends in December of 2552, minus the memorial at the end. No, the memorial's actually in the Kilo 5 trilogy. Yeah, right. They show you that. I mean, but there's a bunch of stuff that takes place before that. So I think I might be misremembering, but I think the memorial is actually in Thursday War.
I think it's at the tail end of Glasslands.
It's in Glasslands.
Thursday War.
Okay, so it is in Glasslands.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's later on. So I think the book starts in January of 2553, and then obviously progresses.
Well, I mean,
it
takes place
besides the Onyx stuff, or besides the Onyx stuff.
Yeah, the current story, it takes place shortly after the Brute Uprising. I don't remember exactly how long that took. How long that battle was, but
you mean the Great Schism? The
Great Schism, yes. Thank you. I was trying to remember that.
Well, here I just pulled up the book. Chapter 1 is January 2553, with the prologue, of course, being in 2552 because the weird way Forerunner Shield worlds work.
Right,
exactly.
And then it skips I shouldn't say skips around. Progresses from there.
It just happens to progress backwards.
Well, because in the Dyson sphere, they think it's still November of 2552.
Well, in their time, it is.
Yep.
Right. So there's like this weird. So yeah, basically in and right around Halo 3 is when this book starts, and laying down the groundwork for Halo 4.
Yeah, and that was one of my favorite things about it. I'm always a sucker for when stuff picks up and shows you like the expanded scenes. Like I love that First Strike, which is my favorite Halo book, picks up literally seconds after Halo 1. I love seeing the immediate aftermath of all this stuff. It's nice that it's almost like the first part of it's almost like an epilogue to Halo 3.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Yeah, and I always really love that stuff.
Yeah,
that's also why I like the Escalations comic with Chief when he encounters the Didact again, even though that's not really the same thing. I like the concept of it.
I like what they did with the Kilo 5 trilogy as far as expanding on the Halo 3 story, but not really. I mean, they were giving some information that was relevant in Halo 4, but it wasn't mission critical. It was bonus content.
Well, like, you learned about Infinity, you learned about Saren Osman and her becoming Sincione, and kind of, I guess, how the Arbiter really started to placate towards the sympathy of humanity, and that kind of plays into Halo 5 a little bit as well. So there's definitely...
like I said, it adds to Halo 4's story, but it's not a requirement for Halo 4's story like the Forerunner trilogy
what people
is.
Say.
Right. Yes.
To me, I always thought of it as a good add-on to Halo 4's story. I never thought that it was critical to read that trilogy to understand anything in Halo 4.
That was actually something that kind of annoyed me about it. Is like I would disagree that it's a good companion to Halo 4 just because it feels like it has almost nothing to do with Halo 4, other than Jul 'Mdama's story arc. Which even then, then you get to the final book in the trilogy, it's completely divorced from that.
True,
but that's my own hang up about the series. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad because of that.
No, it fills in a lot of the backs. There's a lot of backstory that's filled in for Halo 4.
Right.
Jul 'Mdama, stuff like that.
I just I could go in. I'm not going to dive too much into what I wish would have happened, but I felt that there could have been better, stronger ties to Halo 4 without making it critical to Halo 4, obviously.
What I always found kind of weird about the trilogy is that first book is almost like its own little. It has its own purpose, and that's to, set up everything for the post-war world. And it's kind of significant in that aspect, too, in that there was a lot on the plate for that book to cover and for it to set up. Like, almost everything we have in the 343 era of storytelling stems from that book.
Pretty much, yeah.
But then books 2 and 3, I remember not really caring about much when I read them because it just felt like extra story unrelated to the stuff that I liked about the first one. I never really connected with the new characters and stuff.
Each book in the trilogy is kind of its own story in a lot of ways.
Well, we get lots of little tidbits throughout the trilogy.
So many tidbits.
I mean, you obviously have the Infinity being kind of announced there, and Thursday War came out before or after Halo 4?
It was still before Halo 4.
Okay,
I think, because that was the surprise.
The only one that came out after Halo 4 was Glasslands.
Okay, I couldn't remember. Okay, so
sorry, not Glasslands, Mortal Dictata. What am I saying? Oh my god.
Mortal Dictata was the last one to come out.
Was Silentium the one that launched kind of like in tandem with Halo 4 then?
Which one? I'm sorry?
The last one of the Forerunner trilogy?
No, I think it was out after.
It was supposed to, but it came out like 3 months or 4 months later. You're not wrong there. It takes a bit of creative maneuvering.
It's going to be a while before I try to go read those books again. I've got a lot of,
but we're getting off topic.
I've got a lot of other books to catch up on. So yeah, we get our introduction to Julum Dama. We've got Kilo 5, which I don't think we've really heard about. Well, I haven't heard about Kilo 5 since then.
Yeah, no, they've been mentioned once since then, and that was in Halo Mythos, and I don't know if you technically want to count that.
Oh, geez.
Well, I guess, it was Mythos.
Because they set this team up to like be almost like family. You kind of want to keep track of it at some...
I kind of wonder with Osman like finally becoming head of Oni, did they just move into like management positions and stop being a team?
I'm cool with that. Then you can bring Naomi back by herself and explain how she got into the fiction.
True. More plot holes to fill?
Oh my god. So many plot holes to be filling.
I mean, to be honest, with how big the Halo franchise is, there's going to be some plot holes. So it's not something I necessarily lament.
I more lament the fact that it hasn't been touched on more than it existing at all.
Sure. I kind of appreciate that the Spartan 3s have become the new class of Spartans to wheel out magical new Spartans we've never heard of. They kind of went like, we can't make up any more Spartan 2s to the 3s quickly.
Right.
Here are 15 new Spartan 3s you've never heard of.
I'm perfectly fine with Matt, honestly, especially if they're coming from Gamma Company, which there needs to be more.
So we can just dance around to whatever topics we want to address. We're not necessarily going in chronological book order per se. So if there's something you guys want to touch on, definitely chime in. But I wanted to kind of just touch on some of the big stuff real quick. Obviously, we have the civil war that's trying to be ensued by Oni, essentially.
I will still defend that to this day, because I know there are a lot of fans in the lore community that do not care for that. Not just in the lore community, actually, in the community as a whole. I will still defend that as not necessarily as something I agree with, but as something that makes sense in universe.
Oh yeah, it's definitely something Oni would pull.
Oh, so that book's a very big tonal shift from the Bungie era stuff too. It's like really realistic, and it gets into the real gritty parts of the universe. Like everything up until then was more or less, it's what's the best way to put it? It's like full of bravado, and we're the humans and we're kicking the aliens. and look at this hero and this person, and aren't they all cool? And then you get to Glasslands, and it's like a real sobering, like it's like after watching Saving Private Ryan, watching like the footage of like the burned out towns and the concentration camps. It's like once like the initial epic is over, you're like left picking up and like sifting through the rubble that got left in this bombastic actions stead. And I always thought that was cool because it was like a totally different way of looking at the Halo universe for me at that point.
Yeah.
I really like it because it does give that other side of the UNSC and humanity that you really haven't seen before, and it is that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? That viewpoint on humanity definitely has a dark side to it, and being able to see that is it kind of gives you another perspective on how things are run, and it makes sense.
And it's just kind of funny too, because like subconsciously, anyone who's read the books, you have to know that there's this dark side to humanity. You have them kidnapping kids. You have Oni experimenting on, initially Covenant prisoners, but presumably human prisoners too, with the flood. It's this really dark stuff. But then, for whatever reason, it's the part with Oni trying to set up a civil war among the Sangheili so that they're occupied with something else that really is like, wow, that one hit me.
Well, and the other thing too is like you can see humanity doing that to a degree.
Well, it happens.
Yeah. It's very real.
We do it to ourselves.
Yeah, hence the whole insurrectionist stuff.
It's double dealing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've always found interesting, and I was kind of doing this with one project I had, but, really trying to look at, what is the UNSC really, and that's what the book asks of the viewer. Like the Spartans, we love them because we grow up with them and we think they're cool. They're like kicking ass all the time.
Yeah. But,
you really look at Reach and you look at it from the other side of things. Like, you ever see this meme about Star Wars when it's like terrorist rebels blow up space station, millions dead? Like, that's kind of what the Spartans are to the insurrection. Like, they're kidnapped and trained not to think or question and just do targeted assassinations. Yeah. Like, if the Covenant didn't come up, you'd be, and you weren't following the Chief, they would be like the ultimate boogeyman. They're like, the Chief would be the Winter Soldier and not Captain America, if you were looking at it from the insurrectionist side.
I think the way I think of these...
Silent Storm.
Yeah, I think the way I think of these books is they're like two sides of the same coin, and we normally only see Halo from like the nice, shiny, bright navy side of the coin, and no one ever spins it round to look at the Oni side, and that's what these books are for me. It's like, this is the slightly grayer, dodgy side, and personally, I like these. I think these and the Forerunner books are my favourite. I didn't realise as many people were upset about the Kilo 5 books until I started to look into them we're going to do them as the book club this year, and like Ian said, some people get very upset about these books, but I personally like them.
I can understand. I'll say I'm one of the people that gets not about all of them, but I do get upset about aspects, and I especially get upset about Mortal Dictata for various reasons.
Well, both series have one book that somebody doesn't like. For me, the middle book in the Forerunner trilogies was just an absolute grind to get through. It's only like the last 5 chapters that are really interesting. Mortal Dictata, it did add to the story, but it could have not existed, and it wouldn't have made that much of a difference to the entire storyline.
I don't think it needed to be 500 pages to tell that story.
It was a wrap-up of a lot of stuff, it seems like.
That's the thing that annoyed me, too. It felt like a wrap-up of Naomi and Kilo 5's story, but it always felt to me like there were half a dozen story threads that they had set up in the previous 2 books that were just all of a sudden gone.
Yeah.
Like the fact that we never hear from Jewel again after Thursday War, that's still a sore point for me.
Yeah, they could have done so much more with Jewel in that last book.
Maybe I would have actually been broken up about him dying in Halo 5. I would have liked to see more of him, but I wasn't broken up because I didn't have anything to. I wasn't invested in him.
Well, I mean, you could kind of, in a twisted way, think of it as, well, Joel kind of left the web of what Oni could see of him, so they just kind of put a little bow on it and left it there.
In that regard, I can kind of understand it. Just like, I guess I wish he could have had he could have had a little more time dedicated to Joel, and like the idea of exploring, the consequences, the fallout of the Spartan 2 program is, it just in theory alone, I love it. And I was so hyped for Mortal Titata when it was announced, when the first chapters were being released to tease it. I was so excited, and I started tearing into that book when it came out, and then it became, as I got through the chapters, it became a chore to read it.
Yeah, that's how I remember it too. Although I gotta say, I can barely remember the second book either at this point, but I very distinctly remember the first one.
I think a lot of that's just because the first one follows up to Ghosts of Onyx. That was like half the marketing for that within the Halo community.
Yeah.
It's like the long-awaited pseudo sequel.
Yeah, it gave closure to Ghosts of Onyx.
Yeah, it's just too bad all the Halsey stuff kind of overshadowed, I think, what's a really good story.
Yeah. Like, there's good stuff to invest in. Like, let's be frank. Halsey, as a character, is fantastic. I love her.
But she's a terrible person.
Yes, as a person, she is a monster. She is a monster that arguably did what was necessary in her view, but how do you defend kidnapping kids? Even Halsey didn't defend kidnapping kids but like she would like say, like, I know what I'm doing is terrible. I feel I have to do it though. And so it's like it's not necessarily a defense, but sort of a defense. It's a great gray area, and Glasslands kind of gave us a look at how other people would perceive that and react to that, which is good. But then as the series went on, I feel like they just ragged on it way, way too much, while ignoring all the other cogs in the machine that would be necessary for her to do this. Like, Parangosky is practically painted as a saint by comparison, at least as I recall.
Well, I mean, Parangosky flat out admits, the wrong that she's done in the first book.
At least she does in her private thoughts. Maybe she doesn't in the book as much.
I don't recall her. I don't think she ever publicly acknowledges. I think that's the difference. Parangosky kind of stands up and goes, I made these choices, but if I had to, I'd do them again, but I'll answer for that when I die. Whereas I feel like even by the end of everything we have with Halsey now, she still somewhere deep down inside thinks she was justified in everything. I don't think Halsey ever really completely comes to terms with it.
Yeah, which is fine. I don't know. The fact that the characters within the book never seem to acknowledge anything else, all the complacency that Oni would have to have with all this, and Parangosky especially.
Well, the interesting thing is that Halsey looks at these Spartans as a mother, whereas nobody else has that connection. And I guess it's not really off topic, but it was kind of interesting because I saw this thing that reminded me completely of Halsey. I think it's on Netflix now, but it was done by CNN. It's a story about three brothers separated at birth. And they all eventually find their way back to each other. They were all adopted by different families. And then they find out the reason why they were all put in different families was because the adoption agency was working with a scientific study to separate these kids and see exactly how much was nature versus nurture. And they tracked down the woman who was in charge of this, who's this old, 70, 80-year-old woman at this point. Reminds me exactly of Halsey. And just her trying to rationalize, why they split these babies up, and the babies were having separation anxiety and banging their heads on their cradles because they couldn't they were expecting their two brothers next to them, and then one of them actually ends up committing suicide. They all have a history of anxiety and depression from separated from each other at birth. And it's kind of a really crazy story that reminded me of Halsey. I think it's called Three Strangers.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Yeah, for anyone who's interested in
Jeez.
the ethics of what Halsey did, it's worth watching because it'll definitely remind you of her.
Okay.
It's ultimately, it feels like I don't think they explored it as thoroughly as they could have. It very much came off as Halsey is a bad person. You should hate her. You should hate her. You should hate her. And
well, I mean, most of that really came
that
from
dives into grays. It feels very black and white.
Most of that came from Osmond's perspective. I mean,
Osmond
really
her
did
team
not
picking
like
up that
Halsey.
one. Yeah, which I would never blame her for.
But don't get me wrong, she's got a perfectly good excuse to hate the woman. But all this real negative thought really mostly came from Osmond. Parangosky, don't get me wrong, she acknowledged Halsey did bad things, but I told her to do it. Or I gave her permission to do it. So she really can't say, it's not my fault. The thing that got Parangosky was the clones. Why clone the kids?
That's still something that gets me. These days, I've kind of been able to rationalize how it could have happened, since technically the Spartan program was overseen by Michael Stanforth, not necessarily Parangosky, so he could have authorized it, and then somehow she didn't find out until after the fact. But there's all these logistics that would go into that.
Well, I mean, they say in the book she didn't know about the clones until years later.
Yeah, which, like I said, bothers me just because of. Well, anyway,
investigations into missing children would have, obviously been an issue for keeping it secret.
Potentially. I will say that Parangosky does make a good point. There are it's 75 children total, but you're talking about, as we learn in Halsey's journal, I think it's like 39 billion humans across all the colonies, something estimated, and that's in like 2511 or so.
That's it. 39 billion is it?
39 billion, an estimated 39 billion, yeah.
Well, you can also look at the fact that
die in the war,
these kids all came from different worlds, or they were very.
Kids go missing all the time.
Well, it's interesting too that this was kind of another thing for kind of like the hatred of Halsey, was that BB was based off of Dr. Graham Albin, who actually partook in some of the Spartan 2 program stuff, and BB has an unexplainable hate for Halsey.
Which I didn't mind when you got to the suicide note at the end of Mortal Dictata.
Yeah, once it's finally
Although
explained.
I still take issue, he still seems to treat Parangosky like a saint. At least that's the way it comes off.
Well, he was also the original character that his mind was based off of, cared for Parangosky.
Yeah, I know. That's who I meant. The guy whose brain would be used to make BB treated her as a saint when she was. I mean, it's years before, but this is the woman that goes on to literally approve a program to trade lives for time in the Spartan 3s.
Parangosky says it probably best. And it basically boils down, she was ready to do the wrong thing for the right reasons. And in all fairness, her decisions did save a lot of lives at the cost of a few. I'm not legitimizing it. I'm not saying it's right, but, looking at it from her point of view, she did what she thought would not maybe be the morally correct thing, but the right thing as far as saving lives.
The best chance for humanity, basically.
Right.
But that's also what Halsey did, too. Like, you see this in her I hate to keep referencing her journal rather than staying on top of with Kilo 5, but...
Well, the journal is part of Kilo 5.
I was going to say, it's mentioned in there.
Okay, but so for anyone who hasn't read it, there's literally a point where Odie basically tricks Halsey into calculating the odds of humanity's survival in the next several years with the ramping up of the insurrection in order to get her to head Orion Generation 2, or Spartan 2 as it comes to be known. So, for as bad as Halsey was, the reason she got involved in, and not to say that she's blameless, obviously, she is not, but Oni were the ones that basically said, "Hey, Halsey, here, let's do this thing," and basically tricking her into wanting to create the Spartan program. Ultimately, she obviously came up with all the protocols such as kidnapping kids and cloning them and putting their families through terrible, terrible grief.
Well, like I said, the original plan, going back to the clones, they weren't planning on cloning these kids. The cloning was Halsey's idea.
Yes.
And, that's kind of where the creep factor gets in there. Did she do it to, ease her suffering or ease the parents' suffering?
I like to think both, personally.
That's the creep part. She generated these 75 kids, or 70-ish kids, and sent them back to their families knowing that they would die. Horrible deaths. I mean, it wasn't like, getting hit by a bus and instantly dead. They suffered for months
their bodies
with genetic
break down,
yeah, with genetic illnesses.
Is the Halo Legends anime that had the one clone that survived, is that canon? Was that one of the canon ones?
Canon, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Actually,
there's two of them,
it
right?
is referenced also to there were 3 kids that escaped in that. You just focused on Daisy. The other 2 were actually mentioned in Hunt the Truth.
Yeah.
Okay, so there were 3 total. All right.
Yeah. Or no, actually, I think there were 4 that escaped. Because 2 were mentioned in Hunt the Truth as being dead. And then, of course, they recaptured Daisy, and you had, I think it was Ralph 303 at the time. Now he's been retconned to Ralph 103. But yeah, like they all found some of their clones living well beyond the initial predicted handful of weeks that Halsey had assumed.
Unlike Naomi's,
Yeah, unlike Naomi's.
whose dad sought vengeance.
After his wife killed herself over the death of their daughter.
Oh god, that whole intro to Mortal Dictata is probably the first time in the Halo universe that I sat and went, "Oh, this is all a bit up. Like this is horrible."
I
remember
that was part of the preview chapters that they released back at the time, and that's what had me so excited. Like, oh my god, this is brilliant! This is what I want to see. And the book just went downhill for me.
Yeah, I know Travis gets a lot of flack from people, but I really think, even if I don't agree with all the ways that she did the book, I think she was definitely the right person, because she really is able to tap into some real dark stuff with it.
Oh yeah, she is a fantastic. I was excited for when she was announced, because I love the Gears of War books. She does such an amazing job with those.
She does fantastic things with a bro shooter. It's amazing.
But that's something else that also gets me too. Her treatment of Halsey, because it's not just necessarily the characters. It's it feels like the author herself. The way she treats him is just, it feels very in your face. Whereas then in the Gears novels, you have Adam Phoenix, where she's much more he does some really horrible stuff in those books, including wiping out the majority of human population, or aiding in the wiping out of the majority of human population on Sarah. And it feels like I hate to use this terminology, but it feels like she gives him a fair shake, where Halsey is instantly the devil. And if you try to decide otherwise, I'm not going to let you.
Well, and isn't part of that the whole Oni perspective on what they're trying to, I guess, make of it in this narrative of the books?
If it were just the Oni perspective, I'd be fine. It feels like it's the author doing that. Referring again to Adam Phoenix, in the book, he is very much a hated person for all the right reasons. But the author, or the way the narrative, not necessarily the characters, treat him, it feels like they're giving him a little more. It's like, he did some horrible shit, but, if he didn't, there'd be these far worse consequences.
Sure.
Whereas with Halsey, it feels like, oh, she just did this horrible shit, and I'm so sorry. She just did this horrible stuff, and that's all there is to it. You don't need to know anything else.
Yeah, I feel it's almost... I know you're a big fan of Last Jedi, Toa.
Yes,
I feel like it's sort of a similar thing. A part of the problem that people have with it is that for so many books, Halsey is built up as this person that you should like, and you're rooting for her, and then you get to this next chapter, and it's like, yeah, she's really not that great. You shouldn't like her. Let's give you a ton of reasons why she's not really that great of a person. And it's weird for the audience because on one hand you're like, oh, I really want to root for this person, and the book keeps telling you, or the movie keeps telling you, yeah, no, you should, they're kind of an
I looked at Halsey a lot different than pretty much probably everybody else. I mean, ever since Fall of Reach, I'm like, this woman is a total. Never mind. I was expecting this book to come along, this story to come out eventually. I never held Halsey on a high perch. I always knew she was a monster to do this to children. I think, was it Vaz in one of the books
Vaz,
basically says, if people say no, the monsters can't do this stuff. It's ordinary people that make this stuff possible. If the ordinary person says no, then the monsters don't have the resources to do this stuff.
Yeah, I
Bill Vaz, the voice of reason in this trilogy.
I think that's what I like about these books is they at the time, because I was the same, I fell into the Halsey's a sort of, I read all the old books and thought, Halsey's a good person. She's a good character. And I never stopped to question that she's a bad person. And I think that's why I like these books is they like, I get your point. I think Karen Travis does not like Halsey as a person, but I appreciate the fact the only other time I've ever stopped and thought about like how messed up things are in Halo is in Hunt the Truth when they cover the clones and the story of the clones. And that's the only other time apart from these books where I've stopped and went, oh, I should take a little minute here and like sit down and not be all gung-ho and upbeat about everything. So I like that. But I do think it's such a shock to the system when you come from Ghosts of Onyx to this. I think it's best summed up with like Mendez, where he sort of like turns on a dime in about the space of a week in Shield World time, from being like not too bad with Halsey to it feels like he's about to punch her in the face any minute.
So that I understood, though. That made sense to me. It just feels like at any point, I feel like Vaz Vaz was always the worst character for me. It is at any point if he had said anything bad about any other character with the frequency that they rip on Halsey, I would be happier. There's blame to go around, and I wish it were.
So Mendez has more blood on his hands than anybody else. Really, he's produced 1,000 Spartans at this point. 3 companies of them, plus the originals.
75. If you do 75 plus 930 of the Spartan 3s, you reach 1,005 total Spartans that he is at and in training, and 600 plus that he has had that he is sent. Well, maybe 500 plus. Those somewhere between 500 and 600 that he's sent to their deaths. Now that we have the Cat 2s that get pulled out of their training groups before their suicide missions and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, they say it in the books. If you stand in the sewer long enough, you don't notice the smell.
What's interesting also, though, with these books, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying about Adam Phoenix, and it's kind of weird that Travis would be able to write Adam Phoenix, but not Halsey.
Yeah,
but there's actually a really good YouTube channel. I haven't seen it in a while, but it looks at the early Halo novels through a feminist perspective. And a lot of it, particularly with Halsey, is really interesting because she's definitely built up as a maternal figure who's sympathetic and loving and caring of her Spartans, and she's done terrible things to make them the best they can be, and the Spartans accept that. I'm sure there's countless times that you've seen the Chief and other Spartans. They know that they're not like everybody else, but they thank Halsey for making them into these soldiers and protecting humanity.
They even kind of have that in Halo 5 to a degree.
Yeah, they still have it. The only real Spartan 2s that have any animosity towards Halsey are Saren Osman, but she washed out, and Naomi. Well,
and Musa.
She's not as hateful of Halsey as Saren is, but she doesn't trust her anymore either.
I'll tell you, that's another thing that was the thing that I think really killed Mortal Dictata for me. It's the reason it's still probably my most hated Halo book. Is because of that there's a whole section, and I'll say this for the sake of the viewers, just in case they haven't seen it, read it, or they haven't read it in a long time. There's a section where BB is helping Naomi recover some her like childhood memories from when she was first kidnapped in the Spartan program. And she's a child. She's a 6-year-old child. She's being very unruly. And at one point, Halsey says to her something along the lines of, "Your parents wanted you to come here, didn't you know?" To get her to calm down, or to no longer be like, "I want to go home, and stuff," which is truly monstrous. And if it hadn't been for the fall of Reach in Halsey's journal, I could have believed that she would do that. But that and also Pariah from Halo Evolutions. But all those media make the point that Halsey avoided lying to these children. Hell, she was painfully truthful with them. So for her to lie to Naomi like that was just a complete character betrayal for me. And just kind of the final straw. The straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, just interesting that Travis can write Phoenix so well, but can't do it with Halsey in the same way.
A part of me wonders, is it because there wasn't any like pre-existing material for Gears and she basically wrote that entire thing, so she got to build that character from scratch? I think a lot of this is just to be a counterpoint to all the Halo stuff that comes before, that just like whitewashes and glosses over Halsey's less admirable qualities. So I kind of wonder if she had that thought going into this of, I like want to balance the scales a bit, and she just has less distance to work with, really.
That's a very good point to make.
And Halo Collector in the chat also touches on there could have been some influence from 343 on the narrative that Karen was supposed to write about.
Well, I'm sure 343, gave her character guidelines. Like, this is the kind of character this person has already been developed to be. Like I said, even in the early trilogies with Halsey, I thought of her as the character they wrote about in the Kilo 5 trilogy. I saw what she was doing to these kids. Yes, I did see that she was more motherly towards them, but by the time you get to First Strike, she literally knocked out one of the Spartans and kidnapped them.
Kidnapped her. Yep.
She tricked Hood into sending more Spartans.
Yeah, the thing that seals the deal for me with Halsey is she's more motherly to her Spartans than she is to her own child, which is like the big thing you look at and go,
that's a whole other.
Yeah. Like, credit to her for recognizing that and sending Miranda away, but holy crap.
I think that was appropriate use of that word, sure.
Well, wasn't Miranda being her daughter a retcon at some point? Like, originally... I don't think it was ever intended originally for Miranda to be.
It might not have been. I know, it very well could be one of those things that was like the fans, kind of wanted it to happen, and then Bungie decided, sure, let's do that.
Because you would think you would have some inkling of any sort of romance, even like a glancing look at each other, in Fall of Reach, if there was something in the Halo story Bible about them having it, but. Yeah. They didn't even know they were going to do a Halo 2 when they did all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And then they wanted another keys for a familiar character, and
it's like, hey, let's have her have a daughter. It's definitely probably a retcon, it certainly is, but I don't know where I was going with that, sorry.
There's lots of retcons in the Halo franchise.
You can make an entire podcast series just out of retcons.
But I feel like any major IP has retcons of some kind.
Well, the story's 20 years old now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and look how many pieces of information they have to track.
But it's really just kind of disappointing in that book, though, that with all the, I guess Halsey hate and the criticism of her, it'd been nice to see some of the characters stick up for her and kind of speak for us as the old fans and the audience and the people who had looked up for her. Like, how interesting would a conversation be if John and Halsey were in the room and somebody like Mendez, who Chief respects, said, like, do you realize what this woman did to you? Like, all these terrible things that she's done, your parent, what they put your parents through, how she manipulated you. all these things. Like, what would Chief's reaction be in that? But you don't even get that for any of the other Spartans, really. You don't get anything really where they try to defend or, even try to defend, because I don't think you can really defend Halsey. But I think for the audience, and especially the Halo fan base, you need to kind of lose that argument about her in order to accept that this is who she really is.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. It's like, it's not, Kilo 5 doesn't necessarily make an argument for Halsey being a terrible person. It comes to an immediate conclusion that she's a terrible person. It doesn't guide at least to me, it doesn't feel like it guides the reader to that conclusion. It says, this is just the conclusion. There's nothing to discuss here.
I could agree with that. From the very beginning, Glasslands, that's kind of the attitude that's been given, even in the Onyx installation, from Mendez' point of view. That's the thing that's been really hearkened on throughout this whole trilogy, is Halsey is the bad person.
And as Todd keeps saying, she absolutely is. We could go on for hours about the terrible things that she's done, Spartan program related or otherwise, because there's far more than just that.
But for Glasslands as a whole, I completely blanked what I was saying. I mean, like I was saying earlier, it's a lot more adult than previous Halo stuff. Like, it really doesn't want you to sit back and enjoy and be on a power fantasy. It really kind of is like Halo 4 in that it takes the universe a lot more seriously, and it portrays it and asks questions that we probably should have been asking instead of saying, I can't wait to see what the next adventure is against these aliens. It asks... Yeah.
Well, this is the first time in the novels I think we've ever gotten a kind of like an emotional and logic thought exercise, because everything else has just been, this is the military history of the franchise from the original trilogy and the second trilogy. Like, this was just the events that happened, and I think this trilogy is finally where we start to dive into that arena of, well, these are the consequences and these are the things that really impact or affect different aspects of the universe, and we actually start to see the fruits of people's labors and the repercussions of certain actions. And I think for like the two trilogies prior to this, it wasn't like that. I mean,
those are aspects of the Kilo 5 that I absolutely loved still, and I'll defend.
Well, and I think that was one of the things, for at least me reading through it, really kind of attracted me to the story. Is one, it was a continuation of Ghosts of Onyx, so that was a nice tie-in from that book and Halo 3, and I could see where certain things were feeding into the rest of 343's games that have come out so far. But, I mean, Eric Nyland has a great writing style that really brings in that militaristic viewpoint that fits the Halo franchise so well. But since 343's taken over, that mentality and that way of storytelling has shifted. And I think some people are not too thrilled about that, because it kind of takes away some of that mystery in association with some of the mystery that got taken away from the transition from Halo 3 to Halo 4. But for me, and probably most everyone here, it does kind of start to really dive below the surface of the franchise and the lore that was established up through Halo 3, and really say, oh, there's a lot more to look at when you look under the rug. And this was that first real dive into that different aspect of the universe.
Yeah, I think it's really good stuff. I just wish that there was a little bit more nuance to it than immediately telling you. I really would have liked to see the characters struggle with the reality of their world in a way they hadn't necessarily done before. Now that, because for the ones on Onyx, the war is basically over. There's no more combat. There's no next mission. They're just kind of making a life for themselves on that shield world. And once the dust settles, what are these characters left with? Like, what are they going to do? What are they going to discuss? What are they even going to think when they're no longer thinking about the next mission, the next fight, or how they're going to survive?
Just a quick question. And I know I'm derailing this conversation, but did we ever hear about Team Katana after they got pulled out of Onyx, or whatever happened to them?
No, they were the ones that were in the slip space pod. They did. We do know that they were freed from the chambers. I think. Don't quote me on this. I think that was stated in a canon fodder or a community Q&A at some point. But,
okay.
Either that or no. I think it was a catalog post from back in 2014.
Oh, jeez, I forgot about those.
I love those, man.
That was just one of those, like, I forget who alluded to the whole, like, leaving out loose threads. It may have been GT. But that was just one of those other things, because I'm using Halopedia to kind of cheat a little bit on the synopses.
Do it.
Yeah. And that was just one of a few different threads that there's a mention in the book, but you don't really hear about it afterwards. Like, there's that, and then there was the whole, like, severance of Jewel after Thursday War. And then everything with Telcam and New Lanelli kind of took a pause as well in there. So there's quite a few bits and pieces in here that's just like, hey, there's this thing that could really make a nice little side plot thing, but nothing ever happens.
They do oddly wrap some of them up in weird places, like Telcam, isn't he? That's the Tales from Slipspace story, Knight Takes Bishop. That's Telcam's end in this. Like, it's an interesting little comic. I like the fact there's no dialogue in it, but it kind of, like you said, like with the unceremonious end of Jewel in a cutscene in Halo 5 to get stabby necked. I think Telcam being taken out in a comic is a little sort of a bit of a flat ending to him as well. Because I think, like, the thing I like about Karen Traviss is whether or not you necessarily like all of her character motivations, I think she does fantastic characters, because when you look at what she did with Gears of War and you think, like, this is soldiers on steroids cutting each other with chainsaws, and then, like,
read the books and it's like this.
Yeah, she gets to the point where you're like, oh my God, Marcus Phoenix he's like an onion. He's this really deep layered character, and he's more than just the games.
Anvil Gate, where you get into Hoffman's way, like, basically PTSD, dealing with the old Pendulum War, and now the war with the.
Yeah, she does a lot of that. Like, I think my favorite characters in this series is Phillips and BB.
Like, they're fantastic characters,
and especially. Oh, so I was just going to say, like, this is one of the few Halo books where the audiobook, BB's lines genuinely make me laugh quite a lot.
When it comes to original characters, she does really well. Like, for as much issue as I take with Mortal Kitata, I will still say I love Stefan Sensky, Naomi's father. And I'm pretty sure I just butchered his name there, but whatever.
I think you're right on point.
No, that's his name. Yeah,
Stefan Sensky.
He is a great character. I would love to see more of him. I'll admit, because his character motivation is just so interesting. It's probably the most interesting in all the books, and it's primarily explored in the book I like the least, ironically. This dude who lost his daughter and then figured out that it wasn't actually his daughter that had died, and met up with, I think he met the father of Arthur 079, I think. I might be wrong.
It's a R. Forget who he met up with. It starts with an R.
I could swear it was he met up with Arthur's father, but he meets up with one of the other fathers of a Spartan 2 candidate who lost their kid, and able to piece together what happened. It's brilliant. And then finding his daughter again. Overall, that reunion was very well written. Because Naomi's also a great character. Because again, Karen Traviss original. When she's got original characters, she can do pretty well with them.
Even the engineers are great characters, which is really saying something, considering engineers apart from Virgil,
overpowered with being able to upgrade. The only time I ever had an issue with them being like their upgrading powers was the spirit at the end of Mortal Dictata, since it didn't where did you find the scrap to make a slip space drive for a spirit? I can believe that you can take a slip space capable ship and make it incredibly efficient. I can believe that. But where did you get the spare parts for the slip space drive on the Spirit at like the 11th hour?
Well, I think that
didn't he steal it out of something else?
If you listen carefully before you find out that it has a slip space drive, you hear BB say, "Interesting modifications you've made." And, this is before the Hergok is back on board the Spirit.
Right.
So I think the whole slip space drive thing was something to keep the Hergok busy when he was there by himself.
Fair enough, then.
I put it down to like something.
I don't think it was a last minute, let's do this now thing.
No, I just assumed the Jackals had one lying about, but I do like the point that though, like you go through this, and at one point I think Tarkart is probably the most powerful ship in the universe. this little pelican that can do everything.
Yeah.
The Jackals were another point of contention for me in Mortal Dictata. They just felt so pointless.
Well, it was interesting, the story that they kind of built up with Chol and the whole thing of, we want to, like, okay, there's a part of the Jackals that really want to make their own stance as their own species and not be subservient or kind of kick out the pirate mentality a little bit.
Yeah, which that is very interesting. It felt like it didn't go anywhere. It didn't feel like it added to the plot for me. It didn't feel like it really, and it felt very underutilized for me in a lot of ways.
I felt it did that once it got to the end. I felt the build up was good, but then once they got to Pious Inquisitor, then it was just like, okay, this was obviously
I feel like they needed a third party, and that's just who they come up with. But I do like how they've gone on since then with, not to like sidetrack us again, but they've gone on after Sav to like do great things with his wife and
Norfell and the Kelly Gay
and Venezia, like that whole this human colony world that made it through the war. All the stuff they do with that, I think, is really good as well. Like this, how life outside the war goes for people, like all these people living in weird unity with aliens that aren't overly bothered.
I absolutely love about the trilogy was Venezia. Venezia was fantastic at all points.
Yeah, like I was saying, it's almost like a reboot of the entire franchise with that book, and it's it's no easy thing to do. I think for the most part, it really does everything well. I mean, I can't say I really like the trilogy as a whole, but I definitely had a lot of fun reading that book.
Yeah.
Even if I may not have the urge to reread it again or have fond memories of it, I definitely enjoyed reading it, if that makes any sense.
I think I should definitely reread it revisit it.
I mean, I've listened to the trilogy multiple times, and throughout the whole story, I enjoy the whole story as a package. Mortal Dictata, yes, it has some to add to the overall story, but it's not that much. Other than Naomi's story, it really doesn't add a whole lot to anything else.
It doesn't add, but I think there's still a lot of good narrative in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I kind of wonder. It's just not necessarily the execution that's the best.
No, I kind of wonder. It came out a little while ago, didn't it, that they originally didn't have Karen lined up to do what would have been Glass, or what turned into Glasslands. It wasn't going to be her book. A part of me feels like she had another book in her, but had to fudge it into what would have been Eric Nyland's next book, except he didn't want to do it because there's a little bit of Glassland or Ghosts of Onyx 2, and then Glasslands is another thing. So I kind of wonder, did she get cut short somewhere along the lines? Because it feels like she could have done another book after Mortal Dictata and wrapped more stuff up. Some of it feels a little mid-trilogy story stuff.
I don't
recall the Kilo 5 stuff,
like that, but I could definitely believe it.
We had it. Oh, I could dig it up somewhere. It was on the notes. Something came out. We did it on the news and the podcast a while ago that originally Eric Nyland was approached to do the follow up to Ghosts of Onyx, and then that's where Karen came from, because she took this project and like rolled on with it and turned it into the Kilo 5 books.
Possibly.
I can't. Every time Nyland comes up, I just feel like the biggest mistake 343 ever made was not throwing buckets of money at that dude and giving him like a 10-year contract with 343.
I think he wanted to move on, didn't he? Because he did come back for Halo Evolutions, but that was it.
Yeah, I've always got the vibe that he's happy to call it quits with Halo. He's like going out in a high note.
Well, at one point, then there was, of course, that narrative director call, and he shows up online all of a sudden, like, what? I missed it? Oh, no. And the whole community's like, no! Eric Nyland was interested? No, this can't be! How did we miss this?
I think he's still interested in writing a novel.
It's just like he came out of the woodwork once the position had been filled, and everyone was just like, no.
I just need him to give us the follow-up to the Preston Cole novel. That's all I want.
Oh my god, it's the story of Halo.
I know. And that character's still just sitting quietly somewhere. He needs to come back.
I got a whole universe we could throw back to some early 26th century stories. Possibility is there.
I need my Rainforest War book.
So, who else thought Bogo was an interesting name for a pelican? Just another random note. Bog-off. There you go. Bog-off. Not Bog-off.
Tardcart and Bog-off.
So pretty cool.
They are the most
pretty interesting names.
26th century insult. Oh, Bog-off, why don't you?
Yeah, it does. I think BB had a hand in naming that one.
That wouldn't surprise me. It's interesting just to like some of the humor in here, how they did it with BB and how they did it with some of the characters. Kind of helped lighten the mood a little bit.
I particularly liked when they brought the engineers back onto the ship, where Adge is explaining to the Lighter Than Some.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. He's describing the crew and how he describes BB, how he describes Mal. I think he describes Vaz as well.
Yeah, I think he says specifically, it's like, this is Mal, he's the one that feeds us.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That was all fun.
And all the detailed, all the AI stuff they get into with BB, I think is pretty cool as well. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about AI memory tampering, but sometimes I feel like we go back and forth on how much access an AI has to a Spartan's head. But I like a lot of the BB stuff and what he does and everything they touch on with him.
One thing that still bothers me though is the whole going to Halsey and saying I'm a 4th generation AI, an AI created by other AI. Even though she's met a 5th generation AI.
Who's the 5th generation AI?
It was from Ghosts of Onyx. Or no, maybe she didn't meet him. It was a 5th generation AI, but maybe she didn't meet him. Either way, the fact that she buys that.
Have they said what happens to BB after Cortana's revolution?
Yes.
Yes.
I won't spoil it in case you haven't read it, but it's covered in Rossback's World from Halo Fractures.
Yep, I haven't read it.
Yeah. So
I don't even think the story really gives you a definitive answer either.
Which actually I appreciate, honestly.
Yeah, I do too.
Without going into detail.
So what's everyone's opinions on
Leaks Repaired? Sorry.
Okay.
The other.
Yeah, it's Leaks and Adge, I think they call them.
So what was everyone's opinion about Vaz basically giving over the classified documents about Naomi to Stefan?
That I didn't have an issue with.
I didn't either. That fit Vaz's character.
Very
Yeah.
much
With
so.
all the internal battles he's had, especially with not putting a bullet in Halsey's brain. I think that's how he shows his humanity.
It's kind of an interesting question, about was it the right thing to do? Because in Halo, which is about soldiers and heroes trying to save everything and back up against the wall, you don't how often is something how often is showing your humanity or kindness or compassion in these books in this series the best thing to do, given it's a war about mankind's survival against aliens?
Yeah.
You know, should have he done it? I mean,
well, see, that's just it. This is not a man versus aliens type conflict. This is one man talking to another.
yeah, right. And I think that's why it's an interesting thing to have in Halo, and it's one of those things that the series, it's good that it does, because the series does kind of have to grow up beyond, power fantasy, space marines.
Yeah.
Well, and then the whole fact that he was able to escape with the other engineer at the end of the book, that was also a really nice touch to it. And then getting the planetarium lamp. And did the doll's house make it too?
No, just a chair from the doll's house.
Just a chair, okay. That was kind of a nice little wrap up of that little story arc. But it almost kind of makes me want to hear more about Stinsky at some point later on. That's one of the other little loose threads.
Another anthology series. I would love to have a short story just about what Stefan's been up to.
Yeah, I would agree.
Or hell, even you could set it during the Covenant War era, and it's like a story about the lengths he went to discover the truth about his daughter. Because we kind of get that, but you could go. There's places where you could go into more detail about that. It'd be fun to explore as well. So I think finding out more about what he's been up to since would be the better choice in my opinion.
I would be more interested in that. Yeah,
I want to see what he can do with one slightly unstable former Covenant engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a slip space capable spirit.
Oh, and the analogy with the engineers needing other engineers to maintain them kind of is very similar in respects to the Monitor, like Guilty Spark going crazy, and then the UNSC AI is going crazy too.
Yeah, you definitely just need engineers as a little flock everywhere you go. You have to hang on to quite a few of them and keep them there.
Is that the official grouping term of engineers? A flock?
I don't know. What's the name for? It's either that or it's going to be like a school, because they're like jellyfish. It's either a school of engineers or a flock of engineers.
That's a good
like a pod.
That's a good question for Grim.
Too.
They probably tell you because they're biological computers. It's actually a rack of engineers.
There you go.
A rack.
It should be called a murder.
A murder of engineers. That's so contrary to their nature, but it's funny.
Exactly. I love it.
I never understood why crows are called a murder, but
That should be something fun to look up, though. I imagine that has to do with crows being associated with bad omens.
and eating stuff and people. They eat people, right? If you're dead, or is that vultures?
No, I think crows do too.
Yeah, they'll eat
They'll
dead
eat
meat.
dead things.
So I am asking Grim. I don't know if he'll respond during the podcast, but I have asked him on Twitter, so we'll see if he gets a response back to us.
It's probably like a server rack of engineers.
Server rack.
There you go, a rack of engineers.
I like the school idea. There's a lot of different grouping terms that would seem to make sense.
This point is, we need a canon term for a group of engineers.
Yes.
And you know what? Might as well go with all of them. What do you call a group of grunts?
Well, I mean, they kind of fall into the squad.
Oh, I mean, as if they were a group of animals. A swaddle of grunts.
A swaddle of Ungoy. There you go.
Yeah,
I think there is an official one for Ungoy.
maybe.
A yap of Ungoy.
A yap.
Or it was brought up in some, like a stream or something like
Maybe.
that.
Well, I think Todd was saying at the beginning of the podcast that like Halo lore is all over the place. Somebody was saying something like that.
I think I don't know, grunts make me think like meerkats, so like a gang of grunts.
Or a fart of grunts.
Fudge says a fart of grunts.
Yes.
A fart of grunts.
Reminds me of the Squirtle Squad.
Oh,
You see a bunch of grunts like that?
Yes.
How about a minion of
Stolt needs
grunts?
to get a squad of grunts with him, and then he could be like the main Squirtle.
Yeah, the main
glasses. Yeah.
Well, a good one for the engineers, party balloons.
A cluster of engineers.
Party of engineers.
There's lots of possibilities. Any other?
Murder still takes it for me.
I mean, it's interesting because like they don't try to murder at all, so it's kind of ironic.
They try to avoid getting murdered.
That too.
Yeah, like I think the closest we get to like a scary engineer is in Mortal Dictata when they're trapped on the ship, and they're like being sort of like thwarted by him a few times.
Oh yeah, when they're
he's like removing door panels and removing switches and locking people in things, and
yeah, that was interesting.
It's like I like the idea that when engineers go rogue and you're suddenly in trouble.
That the hot new show on Waypoint tonight on engineers going rogue.
Oh, yeah,
I'm picturing Virgil like downing jugs of beer and tossing cars over on a beach somewhere.
So you know what they should do? They should commission Halo documentaries that are like stuff like that. You ever see on the Dark Knight DVD when they have the fake newscasts about all the stuff Batman's been up to, and like the rise of the Joker in Gotham and stuff?
Yeah, you could make a whole thing about that, like with the fictional Waypoint.
Yeah, like have like a fake news like thing where you can like see news reports, or looking back 10 years since the Battle of Earth or whatever.
Now that our AI overlords have taken over, everything's wonderful.
The community could probably make something like that, to be honest, using all the archive footage and
make like a bunch of those. Do you want to know more segments from Starship Troopers in the post-created era? I'm ready to help out my fellow man thanks to the AI. Would you like to know more?
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
That's something that they may even have plans for Outpost, something like that, which would be pretty cool. Is there any other big topics that you guys want to touch on? I know we're pressing 2 hours here. We've got a lot of little smaller things that we haven't really touched on too much.
I think things I like in the Thursday War is like Parangoski and Hood's little joyride in the Infinity.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just like there's a bunch of workers on board. There's still some engineers. Let's take this girl out for a spin because we're going to retire soon. And the whole bit at the end when they park it above Sangheili and the elites are like, where did you guys get a ship like that from? And it's just like, yes, we have nice toys now. We have big things.
Well, and isn't that basically what Jewel was kind of picking up on and learning, like the human's deception, and then actually using foreign technology and not just being like fearful and worshipping of it, pretty much?
Yeah, well, that's how they lost the war against the prophets in the first place, too. Which is kind of nice that it comes full circle there.
Yeah, someone's finally waking up and it's like, oh, wait a second, we can use this to our advantage. And the engineers are willing to help us out.
And I like that they address that humanity doesn't make the mistake the Covenant make, where the whole way through this they're going like, we need to know what the engineers are doing. We need to understand it at all times because we don't want to get to the point where we don't know how the stuff that we're using works. Like they've seen the trap that the Covenant fell into and they've managed to avoid that one.
Well, they even mentioned that they're still struggling with it, especially on Infinity. Right?
Well, basically, the engineers have concept on theoretical theory that we have no words for yet.
I like the idea of the engineers running rampant just in dry dock, tearing bits of the Infinity out and going, I make you something better here. Look, much nicer.
I fix.
Yes, just the whole way through the ship.
It's like, no, how'd you fix it? I just fixed it. No, how? Put it back together and show me how to, or take it apart and show me how to put it back together.
Oh, they're probably video recording them and everything, putting little GoPros on the engineer heads.
Well, they are all running around with tablets on their bellies, so.
Yeah.
They all got iPads?
Yeah, they all got iPads.
All iPads and text-to-speech. Keep them entertained for a while.
Let's be real here. They wouldn't have iPads
They have Surface
They'd have the
Pros.
latest Microsoft Surface. Because this is a Microsoft product. We can't have competing brands in here.
And they still blue screen.
Oh, well, the tentacles are blue, so sure, why not? Let's see, anything else in here? There was the whole search or hijacking Piety to get the one engineer, and then posing as a Jackal ship with UNSC nukes. Oh, and then the whole thing about Forze and Rhea also being filler characters.
Raya. Well, Raya kind of
Raya
served a purpose. It gave Jewel that extra oomph to go after the UNSC for revenge.
Although, do we want to bring up the whole trope about the dying girlfriend for the sake of the male character or whatever?
Yeah, I know.
If somebody better versed in.
And even worse, when you go on to other books, you get it turns into the Disney problem of the dead mother and the child, because they go on later to bring other characters into Legend of Onyx, isn't it?
Legacy of Onyx.
Legacy of Onyx. Something with an L.
Wait, there's a Legacy of Onyx book? And I haven't read this?
Yeah.
Yep.
There is.
Oh, man.
That came out in 2017 as well, I believe.
Isn't that the Ryan Forge?
No,
Yep. Welcome to the avalanche of Halo novels that never stops.
Story. Legacy of
Which
Onyx picks up.
Oh, that's the kids one. That's right.
No.
Well,
That's the one with the kids after the short story and Fractures.
Right, that's the one with the kids on Onyx.
Yeah.
And Jewel's son.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
That group of kids, not the Battleborn kids.
Right.
We got so many kids.
Sorry.
How many books are there now off the top of our heads?
Close to 30.
30s?
Rick, who's got Halopedia open?
I've got it open, but I don't know if it's going to give a count of Halo books.
You're going to have to count that up manually.
Yeah,
6,
I am slowly moving my collection
9, 10,
over to
11,
Audible
12,
so I can
13,
have them all
14,
in one
15,
spot.
16, 18, 19,
I've
20,
got them all digitally on my
21,
Kindle.
22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 currently released by my count. And then we have 2 more coming out later this year in Meridian Divide and Oblivion.
Oblivion.
Pumping them out like
Are you counting the
Marvel
graphic novels? Are you counting the graphic novels?
Nope, that was just novels.
Okay.
Comics, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There will be 13 once the Lone Wolf graphic novel releases.
Jeez.
Then you get to, it gets complicated because there's 3 books in the Fall of Reach comic, but there's also the collection now, and then you have Escalation, which originally had the 4 softbacks, but now there's the 2 hardcover mega collections, which also include Initiation, but they're also making the softback versions. I think the first one's already out. The second one I don't recall is
How about we just put it to stories?
Okay. Does Evolutions and Fractures, is that 1 story or 2 stories?
Individual productions that cover a story. I don't know. Yeah, there's no way to quantify that because any way you look at it,
do I include the commercials in that?
No, I think
I don't think
we've got to the stage where
as a story, but okay.
Well, so
we've got to the stage where
The Life kind of did. Birth of a Spartan did.
So basically, there were 9 novels and maybe 3 graphic novels in the first 10 years of Halo, and now we're over 40.
There's 2 or 3 a year now, I feel. They used to always do a novel every year.
There were 6 novels in the first 10 years. And then the first 8 years, actually.
Because Fall of Reach was 01, then right. Flood was Fall 02, and then
03. That was 03, actually.
Well, through Halo 3, we had the first 2 trilogies and the Halo graphic novel.
And then later in 2007, there was also
Headhunters?
Contact Harvest was the one.
2008 was Cold Protocol.
Well, they really retcon, but I remember thinking it was so goofy how Contact Harvest, they made such an emphasis to try to explain the lore why people would put weapons on their back. There's like 8 instances in that book about them attaching a gun to their back because they added the ability in Halo 3, so they needed to like say in the book that the characters put it on their back, I guess. I don't know. It was kind of weird.
And then 2008's the Cole Protocol. 2009 was Evolutions. And then
okay.
We got we got the first Kilo 5 book. And then for the next 2 years, there were 2 books a year with a Forerunner novel and then the Kilo 5 up to its end. And then like 2012 is when the Forerunner trilogy ended, and then kind of some books here and there. And then it was I think it was 2015 where the books really started exploding, like every year.
Was it 2015 or 2016 where we got like 5 or 6 books?
2015 was where we got like 5 books right before, or at least 5 stories, because there were a few short stories mixed in there, like Saint's Testimony and New Blood.
I have to finish the Roundhouse book.
Yeah, Shadow of Intent.
I get so much stuff I want to read, but if I'm like at home and I got time, I always feel like I have to work on something because I'm dumb and start these projects.
That's basically how I fell behind on the books myself. That's why I do audiobooks. So I actually listened to Halo Battleborn and Legacy of Onyx at work while I was doing work. I just had it on in the background.
I can hear one of my co-hosts, Ian, screaming at me just through the internet because I've just realized he put a whole section on our website with all the novels in it. So I'm scrolling through them now and it's like the Bungie section, a handful of novels, everything in 343. And it just goes on and on and on and on.
Oh my God.
It's page after page after page.
There's so much stuff out there.
We're getting to the stage where I think we've accepted on Evolve that we're just never going to get round to some of the original books because we can barely keep up with everything else.
Yeah.
Just slow down a little bit.
An opportunity to catch up on some of this.
You can knock a book out in like a week or whatever.
Well, I can read the book quickly, but I can't review them very quickly. That takes a month to like write everything up, put the graphics together, and put out a video.
But you got me to read Silent Storm with the review, even though for whatever reason it took me like 2 weeks to remember to finish the last like 50 pages.
Because it's so good, you don't want it to end.
There was some reason or other that I stopped.
What works for me is my drive to work's about half an hour, so I can do about an hour a day on each book, which puts it right at about a week and a half, depending on the size of the book. Because most of the books are anywhere from 9 to 12 hours.
Some a little bit longer, some a little bit shorter.
See, that's why I do it while I'm driving, because I can listen to the road or listen to the audiobook and drive at the same time.
See, then I just fall asleep and it's really bad.
What? Sleeping and driving?
I can't have audiobooks when I like drive.
I had to stop listening to some audiobooks are banned from my driving list because I remember listening to Legacy of Onyx while I was driving home from work one morning and suddenly realized I was speeding with that sort of like intro bit where the family's like on the road trying to outrun the
You're trying to get away from
the Covenant
Oh my
cruiser.
gosh.
And I'm driving down the road realizing, I'm breaking the speed limit here. I need to slow down. I'm not in fear for my life.
Oh,
Calm down.
I have a similar problem if I ever have music on that's from Burnout Revenge. I'll notice myself getting progressively faster and faster, and it's not good.
That's happened a few times with me with some of the upbeat Halo music, where I'll be listening to it and then I'll be looking down like, oh wait a second, I'm really speeding. I need to slow down.
See, what you need to do is you need to take my approach. You just get a vehicle that's not capable of going faster than the speed limit.
Well, there's that.
Or just do my approach. Take the train in the morning.
That's good too.
Yeah, the train doesn't go to where I work. Neither does the bus.
My sister's about to have that problem.
So last thing, I guess, kind of appropriate to wrap it up with Osmond visiting her school teacher, who is
I love that so much.
one of the only people that remembers her. That was a nice little moral touch to everything. It's like, oh, there is a human side to Osman.
Yeah. I thought it was it was a good, with the way she's anguished over reading her file through the first 2.5 books. I thought it was a nice end to it.
I know I'm behind on books. Is there any more on Osman in any of the later books?
She appears in like not in the same capacity as the Kilo 5 books, but she has appeared in Last Light and Retribution. And
yeah, she kind of
I know it was
Fury's
briefly in
those
Last
books.
Light because I've read that one.
And Spops. Don't forget Spops.
Yeah, it wasn't Spops. She
Right.
I think she briefly appeared in Hunt the Truth, didn't she? Like at the very end of season 2? Maybe. That's something else I wanna
BB
listen to.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
BB's
She
in
did
it.
appear in Rossback's World as well. The same story that follows up on BB. I almost said BB-8. God damn it. Gosh darn
Star Wars hype?
BB meets BB-8.
That'd be kind of interesting.
So are you some sort of 8th version of me? How does that work out? I can't do that. I can't do BB's voice. It was so perfectly casted.
I'm surprised we haven't heard of those guys joining something more with Halo, considering the reaction it got.
Well, because the whole marketing plan just failed.
Yeah, I think we need some standalone audio dramas, though. I really think they're missing a corner of the market here.
I still love, Hunt the Truth is amazing regardless of, what it tied into.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I Love
absolute
Bees
awesome
is
story.
also amazing regardless of its horrible inaccuracies at times.
I thought I heard that the I Love Bees, they tried to make it where it was like not canon.
Bungie originally did not consider it canon, though Frank O'Connor said otherwise in 2006, and then more recently, it's a video called The ABCs of Halo, and I think it was one of those videos leading up to Halo 4. I might be wrong, it might have been up to Halo 5, but I want to say it was like pre-Halo 4. And he does mention I Love Bees in there, and it is stated to be canon. So, currently, it is canon.
Okay.
It is a very loose canon because there's a lot of issues with it that are not easily brushed away. You have to make a lot of hard retcons on things, one way or another. But
some stuff regarding the second class of the Spartan 2s?
Yep. Everything about that, because I just found out when I was just doing my Spartan 2 Class 2 video on this. Because I never got all the way through I Love Bees, sadly. I know the general story, but I haven't listened to the entire audio drama. But in Chapter 11, there is a section where Durga, I think it was, basically reads off Yasmin Zaman's entire Spartan service record. It's like she was kidnapped and put in the Spartan 2 program and then died in 2545 or 2545, and Halsey is directly mentioned as part of that program in some of the side material. There's no way to try and massage that into the canon like you do with Halo Reach and Halo: The Fall of Reach. You just have to cut some stuff out and do hard retcons to make it work.
Fair enough. Any final thoughts or comments before we start wrapping this up?
Yeah, I mean, if I would like to see more stuff like that. I mean, obviously the book and the trilogy has its issues, but I really hope they do more adult stories like that, and hopefully we'll see some of that complexity in the TV show too.
You got a good sample of that in I think it was Oasis in Halo Fractures, dealing with the colony of Cairo, which is obviously explored a lot further in Envoy. But Oasis, I think, as far as gray areas and whatnot, in that same kind of area that's covered in Kilo 5, Oasis does a great job, and I'd love to see more of that too.
Sure.
But even more than that, I think I need to reread or more likely listen to Kilo 5. It's been a long time. I've only read each of the books once, and that's been several years ago now since. So.
I'm still working on reading all the books once.
I think I need to give those another shake at some point. Once I've caught up on books, probably.
Maybe some more inspiration for some more videos.
Yeah, maybe.
Aaron, any last comments from you?
I don't know. I think we've covered most, but like overall, like I said, I think these and the Forerunner books are probably my Halo favorites, but you couldn't get me to pick between them. But like overall, I enjoy them. We're due to do them for book clubs this year, so I'll have to listen to them again. I think last year I gave them a re-listen, so I'll have to get back over them. But I would love to see some more of these characters. I want a spy novel about Phillips.
That'd be really cool.
Deep in undercover with the elites, pretending that he's supposed to be there at all times.
Well, and that'd be an interesting way to really dive into the Sangheili culture and background.
Oh, we'll have a novel where he backpacks his way across Sanghelios.
Oh my god, that'd be fantastic. Speaking of, though, this is something we kind of glossed over when you brought it up, Dust. I would just love to see some books that dive into. I would like to see a trilogy that dives into the Blooding Years, the Sangheili Civil War, because they've talked about it. We've seen the beginning. We've seen the end. I want to see a Game of Thrones style trilogy set in the middle where everybody's dying. Obviously, the Arbiter can't die, so don't make it surrounding him. Make him a side character. Give me a bunch of Blooding Years novels where everybody's dying left and right.
Okay.
There's all this political betrayal going on.
Ooh, that could get interesting.
Exactly.
GT, any comments on me finally reading these books?
Congratulations. Oh,
thank you.
On to the next one. No, I don't. I think we pretty much covered everything I wanted to talk about.
Again, we didn't cover everything. If you want to hear more about everything, then head on over to Halo Conversationalists or Podcast Evolved to listen to their stuff. And it sounds like, from what you were saying, Aaron, there might be some coverage on Podcast Evolved for this trilogy later this year.
Yeah, the plan is to cover them all this year. We did Ghosts of Onyx, and then we got sidetracked because 343 keep letting more novels out, and we sort of got buried for another little bit. But I think our next book club's going to be Glasslands, so I must actually check because I might need to listen to the audiobook because that would be the end of this month.
Okay.
I've suddenly remembered I've got homework.
You've got a week and a half or so.
I can crank the audiobook out in that time. That should be good.
As for me, I think I kind of stated this earlier, but I really just like the change in narrative and being able to get down into the Oni perspective of things within the universe, getting a different lens on the way that the universe is set up, and then really being able to dive into some more of those complex ideas and emotions and relationships that we haven't really seen before these books came out. And really looking forward to the next books that I'm going to be reading. So if you're following along at home, the next one is going to be Bad Blood. I'm already a third of the way through it, so we'll probably be in the later part of May. So tentatively, we're looking at May 23rd to be doing our next book club podcast, and that will be, again, Bad Blood. So feel free to either read along or listen along via Audible. Either way, we'll get you there. Let's do some quick rounds of shout-outs and social media, starting with Toa Freak.
You can follow me on Twitter at Toa_Freak, TOA_Freak, or Facebook.com/HaloCanon and YouTube.com/HaloCanon.
Very nice. Masterz.
So I have my own personal Twitter, which is Masterz1337. That's Masterz with an S. But then you can also follow the official SPV3 Twitter, which is at Halo_SPV3.
Okay, thanks. And then Aaron, give us a rundown on the Podcast Evolved and any of your personal stuff too.
Oh, well, there's no point giving out my Twitter because I think I've signed into it twice this year. I'm terrible. I just couldn't get into it. You can find all of our stuff over on our website. If you go to halopodcastevolve.com, you will find that my co-host Ian has spent far too much time doing things to that website to the point where I've lost track of all the changes he's made. It's ridiculous, but he's worth every penny of it. He works for free. But you'll find us there. You'll most likely find me either in our Facebook group or over in Discord. So they're usually the best places to get a hold of us.
Sounds good. And then for us, you can find us on your favorite podcasting services and find us on your favorite streaming services as well. We've got Twitch, Mixer, and YouTube. We also stream on Facebook and Twitter/Periscope for the podcast, which you can listen to on Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We have Fragging Fridays, which will be hosted by Mr. Godzilla T himself on Fridays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Halo 5, I think, is still the game of choice unless otherwise specified or requested by the Podtacular community participants. Is that right?
I think we'll probably start off with some yapping and see what happens.
Okay. Sounds good. You can also check me out on Sundays doing achievements, also on the Podtacular channel. That's at 10 p.m. Eastern Time as well. And I did get some lovely achievements this past week. I beat Halo Wars Original on Legendary. Solo, no skulls. Somehow. I don't know how I did it, but I did. And then on Halo Wars 2, I was playing with Bobby again, and we managed to get 2 achievements there. We got Big Spender, which is... Or I think I got 3 achievements, actually. Big Spender, which is spend 100 leader points in multiplayer skirmish. Long game, killed 50 units with mega turrets, and then Marked for Death, painted units using Pavium or Orbital Designator 30 times. So working on those Halo Wars 2 achievements, and then I think in the May time frame, I'll be switching over with Laird and be going through the Halo Wars Definitive Edition Legendary run over there. So check it out. You can also check us out on all of our social media. We have Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and then you can hop on over to our Discord, podtacular.com/whatever it is, or just search for Podtacular and you'll find us all out there. Next week, we don't have a topic in particular, but I will put up my poll about whether or not I will be playing Turbo this next weekend, so we'll see how that goes. Thanks everyone for listening, either live or via download. We appreciate everyone who supports the show. Thanks again to our wonderful guests for being on and having this nice, lovely conversation with us. We'll probably hear from all of them at some point again in some future lore podcast that we'll do, so stay tuned and you might see them make a return. All right, that'll be it for us. Thanks everyone. We'll catch you all on the next podcast. Until then, keep on fragging them trucks.